We're being recorded. Welcome. This is the Weber County Board of Commission meeting. This is a special commission meeting, hearing. It's Wednesday, November the 20th at 6 o'clock. We're streaming this on Zoom, and we're going to move in. We'll have a public hearing in just a moment. The agenda's been posted on the state website as required, and those who come, and if you'd like an opportunity to speak, we'll give you that opportunity here momentarily. The first item on our agenda this evening has to do, it's an action item, B. It's a request for approval of a resolution, and Commissioners, this would be Resolution 52-2024 regarding the interlocal agreement. It's just an interlocal agreement on roadway improvements for the proposed Nordic Valley Village Public Infrastructure District, numbers 1, 2, and 3. Ms. Russell, you're the presenter on that portion. Why don't you give us the information, please?
Absolutely. Commissioners, public infrastructure districts are governed by state statute, and as we roll them out, we create a policy that supports the state statute. Part of the policy for Weber County is that before we create a public infrastructure district, we enter into an interlocal agreement to take over the certain pieces of infrastructure that the public infrastructure district creates. So in this case, the county would be taking over the road infrastructure that the PID creates. There's other entities that will take the other assets that the public infrastructure district creates. In our case, this is our agreement with the public infrastructure district that after this infrastructure is created, we would then assume maintenance and operation and ownership of that infrastructure.
Terrific. Commissioners Bolos, Commissioner Faure, questions regarding this?
Not so far.
No.
With that, then I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to adjourn our public meeting.
No? I want to hear a motion action item for approval of 52-2024. It's approval of this interlocal agreement first.
Oh, for the interlocal?
roadway. Yeah.
Okay. I'd move to approve 52-2024.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Mr. Brandt will do a roll call.
Roll call vote for Resolution 52-2024. Commissioner Faure.
Aye.
Commissioner Bolos.
Aye.
Chair Harvey.
Aye, motion carries. Thank you. Now we'll move on to our public hearing. I'll entertain, Commissioners, a request for approval or a motion to adjourn our public meeting and convene a public hearing.
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. I'll place that for vote, and I'm going to roll call that. Go ahead, Mr. Brandt.
Roll call vote for moving to a public hearing. Commissioner Faure.
Aye.
Commissioner Bolos.
Aye.
Chair Harvey.
Aye, motion carries. Thank you. We're now in a public hearing. Thank you. Item number 2 on our agenda, or C2, is a request, is a public hearing to receive input on all matters relating to a petition for the creation of Nordic Village Infrastructure Districts 1, 2, and 3. Each one of those would be a separate public infrastructure district. And they're located at the Nordic Valley area of unincorporated Weber County. Ms. Russell, you're the presenter on this. If you'd go ahead and before you do that, Ms. Russell, hold on a second. For those of you who are here in preparation, just for those who are here now and those who are maybe online and those who may be online later, I've asked Ms. Lauren Thomas from Legal to give us a brief description on what we're about to listen to. So, Ms. Thomas, if you would, please.
Hi, everyone. So yes, this public hearing is regarding Nordic Village PIDs 1, 2, and 3. And a PID can be created by a county in an unincorporated area. The public infrastructure districts are able to receive bonds that can be used to build infrastructure. And as a part of that process to create these PIDs, we have a public hearing where you are able to come and comment, which is where we are at right now. And I also wanted to talk about this in light of the incorporation, because I wanted to let you know that I am not aware of any statute that requires the county or limits the county's ability to create or not create this public infrastructure district in light of the incorporation. The incorporation process is a 2-year process, and that first part of the process just passed this election, but we do have 1 more year until that incorporation is completed. And so with that, when when we're in the middle of that process, there again is nothing in statute that I'm aware of that allows the county or disallows the county to stop this process. But that's why this public hearing is so important, and we are happy to see you here, and I'm happy to answer any questions if anyone has any on that process.
During our public comment, if there are any questions, we may hear those because of the limited number of people here, Ms. Thomas. Thank you for that. And for the public that are here, or no, I'm sorry, I can't see online, we've received a number of emails asking us to stop any decision-making from this body because the success of the city, the rollout of the city, and that would be, and so I just asked Ms. Thomas and Mr. Crockett, who's not here at this time, the Chief Legal Counsel, just to explain what the law and what our obligation is. So, thank you. Now, Ms. Russell, if you'd go ahead with your explanation of C2, please.
Absolutely. So, as I stated before, public infrastructure districts are governed by a state statute. The counties and cities have the ability to create them at their own discretion. Public infrastructure districts are a specific finance mechanism for economic development that allows the city or a county to partner with a development project in creating a special district in which the developer then levies the PID, and the developer levies an additional tax rate onto their property. So the city or the county would still receive the regular property taxes on that property in perpetuity of the project, but during the time of the project and the PID's existence, the PID would be taxed an additional mill that they literally choose to tax themselves. That millage rate then is used to pay back development bonds. And I need to really specify this part of the PID process. The development bonds that are taken out to build public infrastructure are taken out by the developer, by the PID, not by the county, not by the city. There's no obligation for the city or the county, and there's no obligation for them to pay those back. That is solely on the developer and on the PID. So these are really good finance mechanisms for areas that have significant infrastructure lifts as it relates to the development project. In this particular instance with Nordic Valley, there's significant water, sewer, and road and park infrastructure that will be paid for by the developer and the bonds that are taken out through the PID. So I just wanted to give that brief explanation of what these are and how they impact the general public. They impact the general public in a positive way in that needed infrastructure is created, public infrastructure is created. The bonds can only be used for very specific pieces of public infrastructure. That's limited by the state statute as well. So this is a really good opportunity to create a development partnership for a project that is going to be adding some public infrastructure into the project. And once again, it's a partnership between the county and the developer and / PID to make sure that that infrastructure is put in correctly and done in a way that is going to be beneficial to not just the project but the community as a whole. And the developer takes on the burden of paying those bonds back.
Very good. Thank you for that. Any questions, Commissioner Bolos, Commissioner Floor, at this time? Any questions?
Comment, if I might.
Please.
And probably a question. So I just want to, and Stephanie didn't bring it up, but 2 years ago we started the process of creating a PID ordinance for Weber County based on state statute. We actually created one for Snow Basin that became a model for a number of other counties across the state. We actually took over a year, close to a year, to develop that ordinance and the PID. So we've all reviewed our ordinance. We know what's in place with that. One thing I might clarify is that 100% of the property owners in the PID must sign off on this. Mm-hmm. So if you haven't signed, if you're not on the list of properties within that PID, you're not obligated to pay any tax. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct.
So,
and additionally, Commissioner Froer, the PID has a governing document that basically says this is what the PID can and can't do. with their funding. And we've negotiated that with the development project and the PID that's in asking to be created. But
Great.
yes, it has to be 100% participation from all the property owners,
Right.
no exceptions.
Yeah. So if you haven't signed off, you're not a property owner, you're not in the PID, you're not obligated to pay anything in additional property tax.
Correct.
Is
And
that
that's
correct?
also certified by our clerk's office.
Right. Okay. I just wanted to make sure we understood that.
Well,
Sure.
that's good. So you said in your presentation, Ms. Russell, these are people that basically in this particular area, and so let's just say this area around the Nordic Valley or this village is going to be like this. So this is the group or the area that's going to be 100%, they're going to all agree, 100% that they're going to tax themselves for this public infrastructure. If there's an area surrounding this area, let's just say it's this big, that additional tax does not burden those people there. It only burdens those 100%, those people that are right inside there, and that's it. Do I
That's
understand
absolutely
that correct?
And just to explain why we're asking for PID 1, 2, and 3 tonight, those 3 PIDs, we call them postage stamps. They're areas within the overall project area.
They're phased.
They're phased in. The development's phased in, so they take the bonds out in different phases, so that corresponds directly with the time that they're actually doing the development on those particular pieces. But it's still all, once again, just like you're saying, it's all one boundary. It's, everyone has signed off that is in the boundary.
Very good. And so I wanted to make sure that I was absolutely clear on this. And tonight, the purpose for this public hearing, despite what may have been communicated otherwise, our reason tonight is just for this PID area. That's it, correct? There's
Yes.
nothing else that we're talking
Yeah.
about tonight except for this PID area.
Correct. The petitioners are asking for you to pass a resolution to create the public infrastructure district.
Okay, I understand. All right. If there's no other questions for Ms. Russell, do you have a question?
I do.
Thank you.
I know that you responded to a few emails that I received. I appreciate you doing that. And I think you've had some conversations with individuals who may or may not be here. Would you mind updating us on maybe some concerns that you heard and help us resolve those?
Sure. So a couple of the concerns mainly was what Lauren was speaking to was about the new incorporation and possibly giving the new city an opportunity to manage this project in the project area and make their own decision about whether or not they wanted to see the public infrastructure that was being adopted into this PID implemented into the new city, into the new incorporated city. And that's the main concern, was the ability to have a voice and a say and to be able to participate in the process of the development, similar to a way that the county has participated in the process, whether it be through a development agreement or through the creation of a PID.
Let me just follow up with one question. So if the city were incorporated right now and this was going before the city, it would still only involve the property owners within this boundary, correct?
That's correct, yeah. Cities and counties are governed exactly the same under the state statute as it relates to the creation of public infrastructure districts.
So whether it's the city or the county doesn't determine the participants or those who have to be.
Correct. So the petitioners would either go to the governing body, whether it be a city or a county.
Okay.
Mhm.
So the timing's irrelevant with regards to property owners within that district.
It is.
Okay.
Great.
Any others? Did you have any others? Any questions that you answered? That you
No,
want to share
that
with
was
us?
the main
Okay.
share was being able to have a say, particularly as it relates not just to the overall creation of the PID, but as it relates to some of the items that are in the development agreement, which transfer over to the infrastructure, the public infrastructure piece of the PID.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
Perfect.
thank you.
Thank you. All right. With that, then, we'll move on to item number 3 on our public hearing. Item 3 are public comments. These are, we invite the public to come forward. We'll ask that you state your name and just the area that you're from, if you would, please, and limit your comments to 3 minutes, but you're welcome to do that now. Anybody in the audience like to come up?
Good evening. I am Peggy Dooling Baker. I live in Nordic Valley. And I'm here today as one of those members of the community to ask you not to make a decision on the PIDs for Nordic Village project until an incorporation transition team member can participate in this decision-making. I just heard it's not by statute that that's the case, but I think by practicality. The city will be in operation within a year. Leadership teams will be in place soon, and I believe they should have a seat at the table in this decision-making. The reason I'm asking this is because under the procedures that I saw in the Weber County Reinvestment Policy section, all of the interlocal agreements should be fully executed before the agency begins a public hearing. Now, it was stated in the work session on Monday, November 18th, that the agreements are not executed. We heard that the water was not state approved and the interlocal agreements were not signed to date with the school district or the fire department or the fire district. So I ask you again, please hold off on this decision. According to the Section F of the Weber County Reinvestment Policy, the agency, and I'm assuming that's the county that's taking that on, shall follow the processes established in the Act for adopting a project area plan and budget, which includes making the plan and budget available to the public, scheduling and holding public meetings, etc. We've not seen a plan or a budget for this project, and the residents really don't know what this entails. I did look at some of the attachments. I did see the maps, but not the plan. And not as an engineer, it's hard to decipher these. It appears that there's designated inclusion areas outside the boundaries of this ski resort. For example, in District 1, neighbors to the east of the old golf course are in an inclusion area that could be annexed into the development without a public hearing. If this is allowed, then a neighbor, as I understand it, a neighbor could have annexed in, and then commercial properties, multi-use families, other things could be in there. And then with this discussion on taxation just a minute ago, would that include taxation, even though we're not in the property boundaries? So that was just a question. Please do not allow the PID to expand beyond their property boundaries without requiring a public hearing to consider that expansion. Other questions I have, and I know I'm closing in on the 3 minutes, but other
Well, I
questions.
gave you a little extra time.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Other questions I have, is the PDI the same body building the infrastructure and then responsible for the quality control and the inspection for the work? If so, is that a conflict of interest? And the qualifications for the board members to manage the PID? Are there checks and balances that this infrastructure is up to state standards? Who will inspect the infrastructure as it's being built? So again, quality controls. And as I'm learning about PIDs for the village project, I had a question on the tax rate, but Stephanie was able to help us answer a little bit of that. I do believe that the tax rate is important because this year's tax bill for the ski resort alone was $444,000 plus, and that's just for the mountain. Will the city lose out on any of those funds over the next 4 years? And that's just for the ski hill. When you say a tax rate at 0.005 for 14 years, the tax money generated, that's not a lot. For an example, since Nordic Valley Ventures bought the old golf course land and since it was rezoned to a commercial and residential properties approximately 2 years ago with the form-based village concept, the land has stayed as agriculture or greenbelt with parcels taxed at 009, which will result in a tax bill of 18 cents for a lot along Nordic Valley Drive. So that's not a lot of revenue.
If you'd wrap up, please.
I will. I'm almost there.
That's-
Thank you. So what I'm worried about, too, is the amount of money for this infrastructure.
I've taken some notes, Ms. Baker, and we'll have those addressed at the end of this hearing.
Great, so I may close, if I may close. The pieces are not in place yet. We haven't seen the plans or the budgets, and along with the extremely low tax base rate, I believe the commissioner should not move on this tonight. I also believe that our new city officials, with the help of the staff here in the Economic Development Office, would make this decision. It may be a win-win for everybody, for the resort and for the city, but I truly believe that the city should be taking the lead in this. So I ask you to table it until a sponsor or their designee from the new city could participate, or even better yet, let the city negotiate this agreement. Thank you for extending my time. I appreciate it.
You bet. I may not do that with all of them, but I was slow to the... That's all right. You were very... You did well. Any others like to address the commission? Shelley, are there any online? Okay.
I'll be a lot briefer. I'm asking, first of all,
I'm
thank
gonna
you.
ask
My
you
name
for
is
your-
Felice Quigley.
Thank you.
I own a home in Nordic. I absolutely love Nordic Valley. It's a wonderful place, as you commissioners know. I'm going to ask you to table the hearing tonight, not because of the incorporation, but specifically because it has recently come to my attention that the street regulating map that is being relied on by the county is not the accurate map. And as the commissioners know from form-based village zoning, that it's the street regulating map that dictates the particular zoning in the area. Why this becomes important tonight or for PIDs is because we're asking, the developer's asking for funding, obviously, for the infrastructure. And that depending upon the designation of streets will depend on the extent of the money that's spent in infrastructure. And I also believe that it's my understanding that PIDs are not supposed to move forward legally until the development agreement has been signed, is in place, with all the requisite requirements, which in this case would include a street regulating map. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? No. Please come up, sir.
Thank you. My name is Dan Mabey. Thank you, commissioners. I appreciate the difficult job you folks have. I started off 50 years ago as a planning zoning director in a county, and so later then spent 15 years as an economic development director for the state of Utah, encouraging, recruiting businesses to come to our state, and at the end it depends on local folks to make places for them to live and businesses for them to run, and so thank you for your efforts. Also, having been a county director, never served as a city director, I think the county's got the right to do county business. If we waited until cities are incorporated or things like that happen, then where does that stop? We don't do police protection. We don't do, I mean, you got a job to do. It's your responsibility at this point. I think you're well qualified to do that. So I would stand in favor of moving this along. This is a difficult process. I compliment the county planning staff who've done a great job looking at this particular project. It's not a checkerboard situation like we've dealt with around the country. It's a well-designed, great water service potential, great sewer treatment potential that avoids all the septic systems that we have throughout the valley. So I think it could be a real crowning jewel for the valley here. And I would encourage you all to move forward with it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Hearing and seeing none, commissioners, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn our public hearing and reconvene a public meeting.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. That passes. We're now to consider action on this public hearing, but before we do that, I'd like Ms. Russell, you to come back up. Was hoping Mr. Wilkinson would be here, but that's okay. Ms. Russell, there was some things that were discussed by, I'm sorry, I didn't, is it Ms. Baker? Dueling Baker. Thank you. And I'm going to check those off as you go over those, if you would. I know that she talked about school, the agreements between the school and the fire, and that, if you'd go ahead.
Yeah, Ms. Julie Baker, I want to clarify that. Those are required for the community reinvestment area. Those aren't required for the public infrastructure district. They're two separate incentives. The community reinvestment area requires a project area plan and budget, and requires those interlocal agreements between all the districts that are participating in that. That's for the tax increment finance. With the public infrastructure district, what we require is, per our policy, we require a list of where those assets are going to be going. And then our governing document, once that is adopted and passed, that requires that the public infrastructure district, once it's created, provide interlocal agreements between the entities that will be taking that infrastructure that's created. So I know it's a little confusing. One's dealing with tax increment finance, the other's dealing with infrastructure creation. And so there's a lot of interlocals. Lauren can attest to that. She's been working on them for weeks. So the posting of the public infrastructure district didn't require us to post the project area plan and budget. That comes with the community reinvestment area when we do that post.
So, listen, I got to tell you, before being elected here, all this stuff was really confusing to me. After being elected, it's still confusing. There's so many different steps and acronyms and different things that go to keep these things straight. And what I'm still navigating through is we the people, so to speak, through law, through votes, through everything, set this up. And some of these things, approvals are on district levels, some of them are here at a county level. When I say district level, I'm talking about schools and fires and those districts, which we have no jurisdictional oversight at all on. All we do is collect their money and send it right out to them. It becomes confusing, and some of them are on the state level. To navigate through all this is tough, and one of the things that I'm going to just tell you right up front for me is I've loved the fact that we've hired. The county has wonderful people. We continue to get accolades from the state, from districts, on how well managed and how well organized our processes are. So sometimes I just have to trust. I have to trust the people that are doing it all day, every day. So I don't have any reason not to accept what Ms. Russell has just said as truth. And Ms. Thomas, who's deeply into this thing, could interrupt, and again, I'd invite you to, if anything is said that's not right or legal. We do our best to make sure property taxes are spent not on legal. We don't want to be in, with all due respect, I thought, normally we have an attorney, or you have an attorney here, but we have Ricky. I'm looking at the other chair. But I want to make sure that we don't spend more taxes on legal defending, or if we want to do the right thing for the right reason at the right time for the right up front. So that's just one question she had, though. I want to come back to you again. She also talked about budgets. In my mind, though, a budget for a PID, I've never seen in any of our meetings, in the 8 years I've sat here, the budget that was open to the public. That's the responsibility of the developer. Just like I've not seen a budget when a house plan comes in on what the budget for the house plan is. Does it comply with the law and what's there, or does it not? That's what we make decisions on. We don't have the responsibility or the jurisdiction to say, well, you're spending too much money on light bulbs, or you're spending too much or too little money on decorations or landscaping. I just, so please.
Sure. Our governing document is what could dictate that. The PID, once it's created, is its own district, and we do restrict a couple things in our PID policy. One is we don't create PIDs that are not going to generate at least $10 million in infrastructure. So we do have a bottom piece to that. We don't just willy-nilly create PIDs for the sake of creating them for developers. They have to show.
Let me stop for a minute. I need to interrupt you for a second. So because I want you folks to hear, and those people who will be online now or later. This was a process by which that we started down that road probably 4 or 5 years ago when these first became legal, and the processes by which our team developed were highly acclaimed. The state had a few guardrails in place, but our team took that and developed it even further, and it came with great accolades from the state because of the way we've done this. That was first started, by the way, with the group at Snow Basin, and some of you will know it had to do with when, and I think I can say this, but when they thought about bringing in, what was that group that was the Club Med.
Club Med.
So, yeah, so anyway, so please keep going.
That's one of the financial pieces to our policy. Another policy piece is the state will allow PIDs to create up the taxing entity district to leverage up to 15 mills, which is quite excessive in my personal opinion. Our county restricts that to 5. The maximum that they can levy onto the property is 5 mills.
Not million, mills.
Mills.
Great.
Those are the two guardrails that we have in our private policy, in our county policy, that differs from the state. And as long as we don't exceed the state, we can create our own policy. It just can't supersede the state. It has to be in compliance, and we're fully in compliant with that. I do believe that you may have been referring to the project area plan and budget, which is for the CRA. And we will publish that when we do our notification for the CRA creation. So that will be available for you to examine online when we do create that budget. As it relates to the PID budget, we do require that we have a general idea of what they're going to be spending on infrastructure, because one other piece of our governing document is that we will cap them on how high their bond ceiling is. So that's another piece, is when we're going through the negotiation process with the developer, we look at what their infrastructure lift is, and we do put a cap on what they can take, how far they can go to the bond market on that. So
Great.
there's three pieces in place as it relates to the county policy: the minimum to participate and create one, the maximum millage rate of 5 mills, and then a ceiling, a bond ceiling that we put in our governing document.
Thank you. And that, let's also talk about the building of it. Who's actually responsible for inspection?
Oh, that was a great question. That was a really good question. So this is also covered in the governing document, and then subsequently, once the PID is created, the PID will then create interlocal agreements, which we did today, and you can do it before or after the PID is created. Interlocal agreements with the governing entities that will be taking the infrastructure. Inside those interlocal agreements, they have to conform to state or local codes and statutes as it relates to creating the infrastructure. So I'm really glad that question was asked.
I think the code says, when you say state and local, but I think the law is that whichever is greater. Mm-hmm. Whichever
Absolutely.
is more strict. So.
That's why, and or. So I was really glad that question was asked, because we don't typically talk about that when we're doing these types of proceedings, and it's really important. A good example of that would be the PID that we created for the Promontory Commerce Center. We put some really strict conditions on that infrastructure. and some checks and balances, and they have to have that all signed off by engineers, and it has to be signed off by Central Weaver Sewer on the sewer pieces. Everything has to be, just as if you were doing a regular development project, and you'd have that signed off by county or state, depending on what type of infrastructure you're creating. It's the same process. The PAD cannot bypass that process at all.
Thank you. You know, another thing that was mentioned in the presentation that she gave was, oh, be careful not to lose out on funds. And I don't know how we, especially when the property's in Greenbelt, when it moves over, it doesn't lose out on funds. It's usually in the other CRAs, which we're not talking about tonight, but
Yeah,
those
that's
types
more
of-
relevant to a CRA discussion, but as it
It's not-
relates.
It doesn't pertain to this, but just so people can hear this, that you two commissioners can correct me if I'm wrong, but normally in these instances, it's been my experience that the rate that the county or the new city would take is usually between 25 and 100 times what that would be. That's what I've seen all across the way. Mr. Maybe you're shaking your head because you've been involved in that, I think, in the state.
There's a recapture period, so there's a look back for several years that you have to pay.
Yeah, so it's never,
Unfortunately, we don't ever get away from taxes.
yeah. That's, and just so you know, too, and I want the group that's here and online, too, I don't know about the two of you, but since November 5th and the city, the vote by the people there said we want to incorporate into our own city, I have personally met with those people who were designers of that new city already, and we've spoke about this and other things. And so that, to me, I've already done that part. I've tried to do my homework before coming and in an effort to be prepared, so thank you. I also wanted one more thing, too. In answer to Ms. Quigley's comments, she talked about the street regulating map. Can you talk about that too, please, Ms. Russell?
There's some question as to the one that was actually adopted, and as it relates to the development agreement, and I really can't speak fully to that. That would be something that would need to be addressed by our planning department or our planning commission.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, Mr. Wilkinson. I'm going to hit you cold, but I'd like you to come to the lectern right now. And you didn't hear the comment unless you were listening online. But we're talking about PIDs in Nordic Valley, but we're also talking about the street regulating map as it relates to the Upper Valley. And can you just give us some commentary about that, please? Mr. Sean Wilkinson is the director of our community development for all of Weber County, and so he reports directly to the commission. And if there's an error here, it's because I haven't explained. Commissioner Frohr, Commissioner Bolos, was there any more detail we can give Mr. Wilkinson so he's a little more prepared? Or
I think just the question is street regulating.
And how that
comes under the
applies
development agreement.
broadly,
There's a
okay.
concern that it's not correct.
That the street regulating plan is not correct
Isn't that?
for the Nordic Valley area?
Yes.
Okay.
That it needs some adjustment or something. Do you want to clarify?
Sure, I'll be happy to.
great.
The street regulating map, which was presented to the Planning Commission in August of 2022, showed there's mixed-use commercial, okay, which morphed into multifamily residential along Nordic Valley Way. The intent, as demonstrated in the documents that were disseminated to the community, was that you would have mixed-use commercial confined to the base of the ski area at the approximate area where the barn was previously located, and then transect out from that into the community, morphing from mixed-use commercial into multifamily residential. And when voted upon in August of 2022 at the Planning Commission, the street regulating map then morphed into the green area, which is in front of the two houses that are located at the base of Viking Drive and Nordic Valley Way. Well, when the development agreement was signed in March of 2023, There was no street regulating map contained in the development agreement, and if you look on the website, you will see that.
Okay, does that, yeah.
That's in March of 2023.
So with all due respect, thank you for the explanation. I'm going to have Mr. Wilkinson go, and then we've got a couple of comments here. Thank you.
Okay.
Go ahead, Sean.
So, Commissioners, the development agreement doesn't necessarily govern the street regulating plan. The street regulating plan is tied to the form-based code. And that's outside of the specifics of the development agreement. So the development agreement will certainly tie to that, but that has more to do with the form-based zoning than it does specifically to the development agreement. So we can work out the details of that, and I'm sure we can get you in touch with Charlie, and he can explain exactly what's going on with that.
But in your professional opinion, does it, so this has nothing to do with the PID?
Has nothing to do with the PID whatsoever.
About the PID only tonight?
Correct.
Okay. Very good. Maybe the two of you can visit after. Commissioner
Happy to.
Faur, go ahead.
Yeah, I just think we need to make it clear, we've confused the CRA with the PID. They have nothing in common. The CRA will be a TIF that will be talked about at some point in time when that CRA, the project area, is defined. Is that correct, Stephanie? And again, the street regulating plan and zoning, what we're talking about is not infrastructure. What we're talking about tonight is infrastructure. Roads, water, sewer, roundabouts. It has nothing to do with mixed use, single family. That's a zoning issue that they'll have an opportunity to talk about that, but it has nothing to do with our discussion tonight, and it should be kept on PID, which is public infrastructure, and the roads, water, sewer, et cetera, that the developers, again, because it's 100% signed off by the property owners, it doesn't overflow to anybody else. And I think it's fair to mention that that is infrastructure that community members outside that particular PID will be able to take advantage of.
Additionally, I wanted to make one other clarification. While we encourage a development agreement to be completed before we embark on creating a PID, it is not part of the state statute. That's just part of
Right.
our internal policy. I wanted to
Correct.
clarify that also.
That's
Great.
correct.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. With that, Commissioners, we're now exercised on item number 5. We're out of a public hearing. Please hold on. Commissioner Bolos, go ahead.
Yeah, Ms. Russell, I just have one more question. There was a concern by Ms. Dooling Baker about the expansion of the PID area. Can it be expanded in the future, and how does that happen?
That's actually a great question. Yes, it can. PIDs can expand and they can retract. And that is built into the state statute. Once the PID is created, they can do an amendment of the boundary. The Public Infrastructure District Board can amend the boundary, and there's a legal process that they have to adhere to do that. And once again, it would also require 100% participation at any given time. That can't happen without a property owner signing off on
For
on that
expansion
expansion
or withdrawal?
or withdrawal. Correct.
So a property owner cannot be removed from the PID area without their consent?
Correct.
As well? Okay, thank you.
Cannot annex in or cannot be removed without their consent. Very good. Commissioners, we're on action item number 5, B2, which is the request for approval of Resolution 53-2024 to consider approval of the creation of the Nordic Valley Village Public Infrastructure, PID District, numbers 1, 2, and 3, phase as independent bodies, corporate and politic, authorizing and approving a governmental document, approving an annexation area, appointing boards or trustees, and authorizing other documents in connection therewith as it relates to the PID. Questions?
None for me.
No.
I think I said enough.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Are you ready for a motion?
I'm ready for a motion.
Okay, just double check. All right, Mr. Chair, I think we've had some good discussion tonight. I think hopefully the members of the public will go back and address their questions, understand what a PID is and what it is not, what a CRA is and what it is not. And then, obviously, the development agreement, as we work through planning, they'll have the opportunity to talk about that. So with that, I would move approval of Resolution 53-2024.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. That's, in as much as it's a resolution, I'll place that motion for a roll call vote with Mr. Brandt.
Roll call vote for Resolution 53-2024. Commissioner Farrar.
Aye.
Commissioner Bolos.
Aye.
Chair Harvey.
Aye, motion carries. Thank you. Comments, item D, under our agenda this evening. Commissioner comments?
No, I think we've had enough.
I appreciate the public comments, and I really appreciate our staff and their deep understanding of things that we don't always understand, and your ability to explain those things to us and reassure us.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I would need to echo that. Stephanie's done a great job. She was one of the main architects of our PID ordinance and worked really countless hours with all our legal staff, with the state. And as you said, Chair Harvey, it became a document that was used throughout the state and has continued to be used for PID development.
Yeah, and it's yes, and that's, again, it can be a little confusing, but I know that you're in the thick of those things, and the fact that there's been so many people who have commented positively on the creation of making sure we're staying in those guardrails. I appreciate that very much. Thank you. Appreciate those of you who have cared enough to come in and taken time to comment. I want to close with this as we're on commissioner comments. It will not likely, no, let me rephrase that. It absolutely won't be in my lifetime. Well, unless I live to be 120 or 30 or 50. But I care about the water up there. I care about what's going to happen with that water, and really as it relates to the reason I care about it is because there was such a huge impact from most people, a lot of people in the valley who have commented on the state's watershed and the water that's going into the Pine View. And sometimes I think with all the different stuff going on, they forget the importance of we have a responsibility today to protect the grandchildren of our grandchildren. 50, 80, 100, 200 years from now, what that water's going to look like. The nitrate level, as was reported by the state, and all those different things, is rising. There will have to be, and there will be, at some time, needed to treat that water so it no longer goes into the ground up there. And through this PID is a way that starts that process. Again, I'm certain it won't be finished in my lifetime, but it starts it somewhere. And quite frankly, it's the right thing to do for the right reason, and it's at the right time. And however that's done, however that's started, I'm expecting to see mistakes, but I'm also expecting to see a lot more cures, a lot more efforts. And so if any message could go out is, let's make sure that in 80 years from now that we can at least stop that nitrate level from climbing in Pineview, which is the major source of water for the people who live on this side of the mountain. And so the greater good for the people of Weber County in general, that we have to focus not just on the east side of the mountains, but the west, is the right thing to do. And that's why we take the steps we do. So thank you for that. I'll entertain a motion for item E, Echo.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned.